We get so caught up in acquiring assets instead of skill sets. And it's the skill sets that are going to set you free.
Mel, welcome to the show. I'm really excited. You know, we've got a couple mutual friends. One of our mutual friends, Randy Garn, never stops talking about you. But, you know, the most interesting thing here about, you know, today is, you know, we're both money guys. You know, you come from, as a CPA, you know, you do so much with money and you work with some huge people from Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard. I mean, those are just awesome names. And so many people today have questions about what is wealth? How do I build wealth? You know, is there a difference between being rich and being wealthy? And, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about money and wealth that I think people are being led down the wrong path. And I really want to dive into that.
I came out of school to be a CPA. I went the traditional path. I went to one of the top back then, the big 8 accounting firms in downtown Los Angeles. The very first job they put me on was in August in Los Angeles, so it was 103 degrees. And the very first job they put me on was to do an inventory of a company by the name of Bandini. Bandini is a manufacturer of fertilizer. So here I was, the very first job out of school after doing all this work, standing in 130 degree heat in a 3-piece suit with rubber boots on up to my thighs in tons and tons of steaming manure. And I'm like going, yeah, this is what I got a degree for. This is, and we're talking a while ago, because we're talking about what, 85. So, I mean, I just turned 60 this year. And so I'm going, this is not what I went to school to. This is not what I want to do. And the strange thing was that I started to get noticed at the company because I was like Mikey in Life Cereal. Any job that no one else knew how to do or wanted to do, they would come to me and they go, "Can you figure it out?" And I go, "Yeah, I'll figure it out." So I was kind of like the fix-it guy. And so the merger and acquisition group said, "We have a merger of 3 insurance companies, and we hear you know how to use a computer." Now, back then, you know, it was the green screens and the 5 1/4 floppy drives. And they said, "Could you create a spreadsheet that did the merger so we can run the analysis and start to understand it and all that stuff?" And I was using a program called Multiplan. That's how long ago it was. And I said, "Yeah, I think I could do that." So I created this big model and everything. And I started to hear things about, you know, they're doing a deal and the negotiating and the conversation. I was in the halls with it and everything. I go, this certainly beats manure. And so I asked to be transferred into the merger and acquisition group. And I spent the rest of my tenure at the firm doing M&A work, doing valuations, doing strategic consulting, helping build businesses and helping build lives. And so that's kind of the path at the big firm. But the thing that came to me was one night, it was a Friday night. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was still working late. I was looking at the skyline. We were on the 26th floor of a downtown building, looking at the skyline of downtown LA, which is beautiful at night. During the day, forget it. But at night, it's all lit up. And I realized, and I looked back at the partner I was working for, who is the one that I did most of my work for. He's overweight. He's stressed out. He's working 7 days a week, and he was probably a moment away from a heart attack. And I thought, this is the vision of my life. This is not what I was meant to do. I want to have an impact. I want to make a difference. I want to know that the work I'm doing is helping people's dreams come out of the darkness again. And so I literally walked into his office and said, "Tom, this is not my life, and I got to quit." Now he's like, "Good joke, get back to work." I go, no, I'm serious. He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, I can't do this anymore. And he said, "You're on fast track to partnership. You're doing all the things right, and you're going to walk away." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "When?" I said, "Tonight. It's my last night." And he goes, "You're going to screw up your career." I said, "I might." and at least I'm doing it when I'm young enough to fix it. And I left. Wow. And so that's how I kind of, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I just did it in a moment, which is, my poor Jewish mother was like, what are you doing? And so I left and literally went to Japan and lived in Japan for 4.5, 5 months, and then came back and said, I'll figure this thing out. And I went into a firm, became managing partner of that firm pretty quickly within a year. And then I've just stayed on this path of working with entrepreneurs and business owners and helping people build their dreams.
Mel, you said a couple things that I want to unpack there. One of them was, how you saw your future self in looking at this other gentleman that was in this M&A division. And I'm very familiar with that. When I spent years in Wall Street, we went through lots of those. And I always thought I wanted to be an investment banker. I remember reading books about investment banking firms, Kuhn and Loeb and all those. And I'm like, that's what I want. And then I started reading books and I'm like, wait, these guys work 18-hour days in front of computers, crunching numbers. Like, that's not the life I want. And you had that realization, but most people would have had that. And then they would have just kind of conformed and said, well, I make good money and I'm just going to stick with this, but you didn't. Something inside you said, I'm here for more. And that more was you wanted to solve people's real problems instead of like just helping this company merge with another company and doing these things, which it's a great industry. It's right for some, but it wasn't right for you. And I commend you first off for making that leap. Most people would not be able to do that, but you're a creator. You're not a conformer, and you didn't want to conform to what this gentleman was like, his life was like. And you went off and did this. And boy, that's powerful. I wish more people would see that. There's the Earl Nightingale. You ever see that? The strangest secret in the world. Yeah. And he talks about the difference between success and failure. And he says, there's only one thing that I can come up with that really shows me what is the difference between someone's success and failure. And it's creation. Those that are successful have created, and in creation, they have to solve people's problems. The others, the 95%, as he refers to, they conform to what somebody else tells them their life should be. You mentioned your mother, my mother too. I come from a very lower middle class family. And in all these dreams that I've had of being a pro snowboarder and going out and, running these snowboard shops and becoming what I am today, my mother was always like, why can't you just be satisfied? Why can't you just be happy? Mel's laughing. Why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just be normal? And I feel like, and you did too, something in your gut, we're here for a higher calling, to do more, to solve more problems for people. And gosh, I guess you're either cut from that cloth or you're not. And you were.
So here's an interesting thing. And I am an identical twin. Okay. When we were growing up, and he's a CPA also, when we were growing up, he was the spontaneous one. He would do everything first, whether it was football, track, skiing, all that stuff. And I would kind of follow along. And then something shifted. And I don't know when it was, but he became much more conservative. And he worked for a guy in college, and he stayed working for this guy for 35 years.
Wow. It's a long career.
And the guy was miserable to work for. He didn't appreciate him. He didn't acknowledge him. Anytime he came, and he built this home, he was a CFO of a home building company, built this home building company at $150 million. And then 2008 hit and things started to go crazy. And he had to renegotiate all of the debt and make sure that stuff was taken care of. Well, the thing is that was like living in an abusive relationship. And I remember sitting down with him and saying, dude, man, you got to leave. And he says, what skills do I have? I go, you built a company, you restructured the debt, you did partnerships, you ran a mortgage company. Look at all the skill sets, but you think about the environment that we're in. That environment squashed his dream, squashed the potential. And it wasn't until recently, 2 years now, he's just hit the 2-year mark, where a banker said, I got a place for you. And I got to tell you, he's at a place where the guy will acknowledge him. He appreciates him. He says, man, my business is so much better with you. All the team, the staff has coalesced in front of him. And the difference in how he shows up, the kinds of things he's done and does. But there was this time in his life that he wouldn't make the decision. And he would say, he says, Mel, you just made better decisions. I said, nah, I just make different decisions.
I've made it my entire life. Like you were talking about with your brother, like I made this change. I left Wall Street. It was hard. And I did it just like that. I had a nice, cushy, high salary. You know how advisors are. They're in the business 16 years. Like it's coasting. And I just, one day I woke up and I just didn't like the skin I was living in. And I just left and I started seeking this knowledge of what the wealthy did. And I started saying, there's got to be a way to teach people this. Most people today, like the younger folks, like they've never seen hard times. They don't even remember 08. They're like, yeah, I remember mom talking about that. They don't even remember it. They don't remember the dot-com crash. They don't remember the pressures in the 80s. But can we talk a little bit about your views on what you call the financial house of cards? And how is it that people are getting trapped in this financial knowledge? And why is it that they can't see that there is a whole nother side and they could be operating in this perpetual tailwind environment of wealth?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think, especially for entrepreneurs, one of the challenges I see with entrepreneurs is that, look, we get into business. I decided to leave because I knew there was something more, but I also decided to leave because I thought I would have more control, more freedom, more to be able to just say, it's my life now and I can do what I want. Nothing could be further from the truth. I got on a treadmill. I started running. And especially in the kind of business I was in as an accountant, as a consultant, I was swapping hours for dollars. So that meant the only way I was going to make more money was to run faster, run longer, run harder. And inevitably, I was going to go into burnout, breakdown, or have an accident, which is exactly what happened. I had a bike accident. But, and the interesting thing was, a dear friend of mine who retired at 36 years old decides after this bike accident, I had a grade 4 concussion. I had no feeling on the right side. And I was stuttering. And he says, I'm taking you out for a pastrami sandwich, when I used to eat that stuff. And sitting across from me, he looks at me and goes, how much is enough? And I go, what the heck are you talking about? He says, how much is enough? The bike accident was because you were distracted, you were distressed, you were angry, you were running a race that you don't even know what the finish line is. And how many entrepreneurs don't know where the finish line is? They don't have a clue at where it is, and what they believe is their savior is their business, but they think the business is there to give them freedom, and it was never meant to give you freedom. The business is there to do two things: have an impact and create solutions for other people, and to create cash flow. It wasn't meant to give you freedom. You all have to create a machine, a second machine. There's the business machine. We got to create the second machine. Until we create a money machine, we have no freedom. I truly believe as an entrepreneur, your greatest powerful wealth building tool is your business, but it is your greatest point of failure too. And if we're not careful about it, something happens. A pandemic happens, cancer happens, legislation happens, a change in industry tides happen. Something happens, and then what? How many businesses have gone out of business since the pandemic started, and are never coming back? And those lives, and the families' lives, and the employees' lives are permanently impacted because of that. And I think it was fully avoidable if we understood the house of cards we were building as an entrepreneur.
I literally created a company which became the worst thing I ever wanted, because I was working in the business, not on the business. And I was always thinking, I got to work harder. I got to work longer. I got to do more. I got to trade hours for dollars. I never had that machine because I never understood wealth. I never understood the principles and the laws of wealth. And Mel, have you read the book, The Richest Man in Babylon?
Multiple times.
Oh my gosh. I can't stop reading the dumb thing.
Yeah.
But like the laws that were applicable to gold back then, right, which is wealth today, folks, just so everybody knows, if you haven't read The Richest Man in Babylon, it's about exactly that, the richest man in Babylon, I think 903 or 908 BC. Yeah. The laws that were applicable to building wealth then are the identical laws that are applicable to building wealth today. And it talks all about this machine. And the machine is, when we work for money and we trade hours for dollars, we have to decide what we're going to keep. And he talks about the 1/10 rule, keep 1/10. And everybody that's, owns a business, you're like, I keep all the money because I work hard for that money. You do not. You give that money to somebody else. Don't you have to pay the vendors? Don't you have to pay the rent, the heat, all that? You give that money, but you got to decide to pay yourself first and decide that you're going to keep it. So it talks about that, but that's only part of the battle. And this is what Mel, I think you were just alluding to. Once you build this nest egg, this war chest, right? Your person, the richest man in Babylon, we then have to learn how to make our money work for us.
You hit so many important things here, because if we just got that message, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. If you just got that message, we could solve the financial distress in this country. I mean, the bottom line is that I look at it and say, you were talking about principles. And I said, no one out there, and this may be hard for some people to swallow, but no one out there has money problems. They don't have money issues. They have money symptoms, but they don't have money problems. Where their money is today, their situation is today, it is a symptom of the choices, the behaviors, and the habits of the past. Now, the beautiful thing of that means if I change my choices, my behaviors, and my habits, my symptoms will change. But too often, we feel like we're the victim, and we look to place blame, or we look to find responsibility outside ourselves and not take control of our own financial world. Because one, I'm a creator, I'm not a numbers person, or it's complicated, or it's not. I mean, it may not be easy depending on where you're at. I mean, there's work involved, but it actually is simple. And the idea of principles, one of the definitions of principles that I love is that principles are a system of behaviors. The reason the richest man in Babylon still holds true today and will hold true in another 100 years is because it is a system of behaviors that cannot be questioned. I mean, you can question it, but it works. So, I mean, if we just understand that our behaviors are causing our outcomes financially, then we have a lot more control of our financial destiny than you would think.
I agree. And I think it should be mandatory reading. And actually, like, if you really think about Babylon, forget about the richest man in Babylon, and they talk about it. Babylon was the wealthiest city in the world. And everybody, if you ask people, because I go to masterminds and speak, and I'm like, can you tell me why Babylon was the wealthiest city in the world? Oh, they had more gold. Oh, they had more silver. They had this. They were on the one of the best rivers. Wrong, 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 wrong. The king said, why is it that these select few are so wealthy and the rest of them are struggling? And he brought him in. Elcott was his name. They brought him in and they said, listen, like, you're so wealthy. And they were almost kind of faulting him for being wealthy. And finally, the king was smart enough to say, well, if you have this knowledge and this system of behavior and habits, I need you to teach our teachers how they can tell all the citizens the path to wealth. And Elcott did that. And he did it with simple principles, laws, and then rules for those laws. And he told these teachers over 6 days, if I'm not mistaken, they became the wealthiest city in the world, not because of anything other than knowledge and application of simple principles.
We get so caught up in acquiring assets instead of skill sets. And it's the skill sets that are going to set you free. Like I said earlier, I lost 1/3 of my net worth in 2005 to a Ponzi scheme. Between me and two other buddies, we lost $4.5 million. But I didn't lose the skill sets. And this talks about behaviors, and this talks about the mindset. So there was 3 of us in it. One of them, he had retired at 36 years old. And so what he did is he just kind of shrunk his life down and just kept on living. He just kept on going. He said, all right, whatever, and just went on. The other one who turned around, and he's the one that got us into it, spiraled into resentment, spiraled into anger and bitterness. And he destroyed his business. He destroyed his marriage, and he destroyed his liver. He's just coming out of it just about 2 years ago. And this was back in '05. Then there was me. And this is not a pat on the back, because I spiraled into resentment. I spiraled into anger. I started to blame. I started to look at things, but I had a purpose, and that purpose was my son. I was a single full-time dad, raising him since he was 5.5, 6 years old. Now, at that point, he was 15. And I looked at him and I said, if I curl up in the corner in the fetal position and hope for the storm to pass, then I'm teaching him that when adversity hits, get in the fetal position and wait. And so I sat him down and I said, I can't teach him that. I sat him down. I said, let's talk about what happened. Let's understand this. Now, the idea here, and this is something that I think everyone needs to understand, is that, and I talk about this, is that there are things that happen. Most of our financial stuff, our money stuff, unless you go through stuff like you and I have gone through, as far as we were professionals, so we read and we learned, most of our lessons about money, wealth is caught, not taught. We get it from observation, but we don't discern. We're not really picky about who we're observing. It's our parents arguing. It's the media demonizing money. It's the neighbors or social media. And then we take that, what we hear, we give it a meaning as an interpretation, which then becomes an identity, which impacts the behaviors we already talked about, which creates a money set point for you. And you are caught in that. And it's the stories we tell ourselves that create the life that we live with ourselves. And when we understand that, because trust me, when I lost all that money, stories were coming. I'm a CPA. I should turn in my license. I'm an idiot. I shouldn't have done this. I can't believe people come to me for advice. I shouldn't be advising. I can't make good investment decisions. And if I stayed in that story, we wouldn't be talking today. You got to separate the facts from the interpretation. And the facts were, I gave this guy money, a lot of money. He stole it from me. That's the facts. The facts are, he didn't take away my skill sets. The facts are, I made the money. The facts are, I can make the money again. 18 months. Not only did we recover what we lost, but because we focused on the skill sets, we surpassed it by 3x. The skill sets, you talk about inheritance. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out, how do we pass the wealth on? How do we pass the assets on to our heirs? Forget the assets. Think about how you pass the skill sets on to your heirs. My little granddaughter was born, and interrupt me anytime you want. My little granddaughter was born August 2nd. And someone asked me, what would you tell your son, or what are you going to do for your granddaughter? I said, here's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to put $500 into an investment account for her the day she's born. And every week I'm going to put another $25 in. And I'm going to do that for the first 20 years of her life. When she turns 10 or 11 years old, I'm going to start teaching her about money. I'm going to start transferring the skill sets just like I did with her dad. And I'm going to teach her enough that by the time I put $24,000 in, that's it, $24,000 in. And she understands the power of investing, the power of time as a lever to your wealth. She will end up with $1.5 million before she retires. And I will have set up my little girl, my little princess, for $24,000. And if we just taught that lesson to our youth, to our parents, to the people, $25 a week, that's all it took. But we have to give them the skill sets to make that happen.
And
man, you got me on a preacher's block today.
No, we're oh, you think that's it? We're going down a fun path right now, because I just had my first daughter. I'm 44 years old and I now have a 17-month-old. But when she was 6 months old, I set out on this journey because of primarily this book and all the other learnings that I've had and the knowledge I've had of, I'm going to set her up, but I'm not going to give her things. It's I think Shaquille O'Neal, there's a post going around where he talks about his kids think that they're rich. And he says, no, I'm rich. because he's got to teach his kid how to be rich. Well, I think the same thing, like no matter what level of success we are at in our lives, we need to teach our children how to build wealth, these laws, these principles. So I set up an account for my daughter. It's $5,000 a year. I'm going to fund that until she's old enough where I can actually put her on payroll. Then she's going to do chores around here and have fun. And then I'm going to pay her, but that money's going to go into this privatized banking account that I set up for. And, I've modeled it out till the age of 90 years old for her. And it's just insane, but it's insane not because of anything other than time. I mean, it's a guaranteed account, so it just chugs along. It's not an investment account. But the one thing, and I tell people this all the time, Warren Buffett, like I ask people, why is Warren Buffett one of the wealthiest men in the world? Oh, he's a brilliant investor. Indeed he is, but that's not why. And they go on these all different things. His father, helped him out, all these things. And I said, no, it's one 4-letter word called time. He has been investing longer than just about any other investor, and he has stayed true to the principles that he was brought up by his mentors. And if you read The Intelligent Investor, you learn all about that. But that's it. My daughter has time. And if I teach her how time and wealth works, she can never, ever fail, but she can fail if we don't teach our kids how to do this. Now you're doing this with your son, Jeremy, through Affluence Blueprint. You're showing, how to do this path. I'm doing it by writing a book called The Laws of Wealth. And it's an inspirational book, basically written almost like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of me telling stories to my daughter about wealth and how I failed and how I've succeeded and how I've done this. And it's going to be written in this weird context, but can we talk just a little bit about the importance of us teaching our children how to get off of the traditional financial knowledge that's leading us down the path of, I can't call it anything other than financial slavery, because that's what many people are living today because of the misguided information they've been given. And remember, you mentioned that, not the information that they were seeking out to live a better life. So talk about Affluence Blueprint.
Jeremy, like I said, he came to live with me as a single dad at 5.5. I got pushed out of my partnership at that time. So I had no cash flow, no client backlog. And I just bought the house. So we were $320,000 in debt. And so I did what most entrepreneurs do. I got on the treadmill. I started running. I did the thing that we were talking about earlier. And I was running. All of a sudden I'm getting clients. I'm getting jobs. I'm getting cash. I'm going, dude, this is going to work. The roof's going to stay over our heads and this and that. And he runs into me and he says, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. And so I knelt down looking to grab this picture. It was in blue felt tip pen. And there I was standing in front of 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear, one on the desk ringing. And in a moment, a 6-year-old gave me the most powerful lesson I could have learned about business, about wealth, and about life. Because it would have been easy for me to sit back and say, but kid, I got to do this for us. I got to do this to put the roof over our heads. And I get people have to pay bills and all that stuff, but I got to do it for us and get him to try to see that the profits were important, but it wasn't the profits that mattered to him. It was the presence that mattered to him. He wanted my presence. And so many people came to me and said, oh, Mel, but you know what? You got to get work-life balance. You see, work-life balance is a myth. Because balance insinuates that there is 2 counter forces working against each other, like a tug of war or a constant pushing battle to try and balance things out. It's not about balance in life. It's about harmony in life. Because every choice we make, I realize every choice we make is a life choice. It affects Jeremy. It affects the people that I work with. It affects my loved ones. And so I sat back and said, how do I do business differently? How do I do money differently? How do I release myself so I have the opportunity to serve the greatest gift that I was given, and that was to be a dad. And it was that lesson that led me down this path that ultimately came to this whole idea of the Affluence Blueprint, because I started to do business differently and build this money machine outside the business, because I knew that at some point things could happen. Well, June 2019, things did happen. June 2019, I'm flying, 2 weeks before it, I'm flying around the country. I'm speaking on the biggest stages. I'm masterminding with some of the top people. You know, a lot of them. I just flew back on a G5. If you haven't done it, you got to do it at least once, especially if you can get someone else to pay for it.
That's key.
And 2 weeks after I stepped off of that G5, I found myself in a hospital bed and hearing 3 words I never thought I would hear. And that is, you have cancer. They found a 5-centimeter tumor in my bladder, which turned out to be 7.5 centimeters. They're looking at me as I'm going in for surgery and saying, here's the deal. It's on top of the prostate. We might have to remove the prostate. We can't see the ureter on the right side. And that means that when we go in, if we're concerned, we're going to put a tube and a bag in for the kidney. And I hate to break it to you, but if it's bad, you're going to lose your bladder. So my whole life got turned upside down. My whole life became this new battle, this new crusade. So I sat back and I said, this is going to be completely life-changing, altering. And so I said, it's time. We're going to shut the business down. We're going to get out of the business. We're going to focus, not get out, but we're going to slow it down. The bottom line is that I said, I will fight this emotionally, physically, medically, energetically, spiritually. I will fight it on all levels. But the beautiful thing, because of the lessons from a 6-year-old boy, is I didn't have to fight it financially. That all I had to do is say, I'm going to extract myself from the business. And I'm going to flip the machine on and let it start spitting out the cash so I can continue living. I didn't have to sell anything. We didn't have to, I didn't have to shrink our lifestyle. You know, I wasn't selling my wife's shoes. If I did that, they would have been a fate worse than the cancer, you know? So I just didn't sell anything. We just kept everything going. But my focus shifted to healing. My focus shifted to this fight and this battle. And it's not about the cancer, because shortly after June 2019, we got hit with the pandemic. So the real question is, are we doing the right things to deal with it when life just happens, because it will? And so that's what gave rise to the realization that my process, the way I do things, works. And so I had a lot of friends that said, you've done this with one-on-one people, you've done it with your son. Why are you not doing this more broadly? That became the process called the Affluence Blueprint for entrepreneurs to help them really build out the things. And it became this new season of my life because of the cancer. You know, I'm like I said, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I should have never got the cancer. No one in my family's ever got the cancer, you know, so somehow I ended up with it. Somehow it was put on me, and we never figured out why. And yet I went into a dark place looking backwards and saying, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? How, looking for someone, someplace to blame. And maybe we do this with our money decisions too. And it wasn't until, and I was going to stay dark. It was going to be bad. I was going to be bitter and angry because I had to deal with this. If I didn't realize one thing, and that is this, the why wasn't behind me. The why was in front of me, in the sense that the cancer is why I do what I do. It's the one thing that makes the cancer valuable and makes sense to me. And when people say, well, you don't have to work, why are you going back in the game? Why are you doing this now again? I said, because I need it to make sense of the cancer. It's what I believe I'm called to do because of the journey I've been on. And that's where the whole thing came from.
There's something, you said so much there, but there was one thing that you mentioned, and you didn't say it, but I want our listeners to understand this. You do it because there's a higher calling, and all of us need to understand that we're all here on earth for a certain reason. You can make your reasons. Nobody really knows what it is, but the number one thing we all have to do, and this is a universal law. So I want to explain laws. Laws are just like gravity. Go to the top of the highest building in your town and jump. That's gravity. You can't bend it. You can't stop it. You can't change it. The law that I'm talking about is the law of giving, higher purpose, the law of going out there and actually solving other people's problems unconditionally. And that being your journey. Every successful business does this one thing. They solve a problem for someone. Mel, you're solving problems. You don't have to work. Money isn't the issue. You've got the machine churning. You could just sit back and do that. And a lot of people would be like, well, why would I work if I don't have to? Because sometimes it's not because we have to. And you should never work because you have to. You should work because you want to. And if you're not working because you want to, find something else to do that you want to do. That's your calling. Figure it out. And Once you do that, and you change your focus from you and the me, the G5, the Lamborghinis and all that, we change from that. You can have all those things if the machine's working for you, but you can't have those things if you violate this law. And it's my 5th law in my book. And that law is solving other people's problems through giving. And a lot of people always say, well, when I have money, I'll give. Wrong. It's just like money. How we manage a little is how we manage much. How we give when we have nothing is how we give when we have everything. It is the single universal law that everybody violates because we're so caught up in a world that only focuses on what we have. And we forget about the most important thing is what can we give? And giving doesn't have to be money, folks. You don't have to write a check. Go out there and make somebody smile. The greatest gift you can ever
do. The little
give.
things.
My gosh, how many, all of the listeners, I wish I could ask a question like I do in audiences, but all of us get these envelopes and it's got a nickel in it or a dime and it's asking you for something. How many of you rip them up and throw them out? You see, I changed that. Every one that I get, I open it up and I have zero feelings about this. And I literally grab my pen, and I'm a check writer. I write checks, and I write a check, and whatever my hand writes, whatever's in my gut, my heart, whatever I write, $5, $100, $1,000, and I mail that back. And then what does that company do? They send me more. And every time I get it, I write another check. Folks, when you unconditionally give without a reason, without something that you're expecting back, life gives you anything you ask of it. Because in life, this is another thing you all need to understand is whatever you ask of life, life will give you. But there are rules and there are laws you must follow to have that one principle happen. It is the single greatest thing in advice I can give from any stage, from any podcast, from any place that I speak. And both of us, God, we probably speak to millions of people combined, maybe more. Yeah. And that is the single number one thing that everybody needs to understand that so few people will ever apply in their lives because they're so focused on them. And that is what you're doing. You don't have to work, but you want to because you're out for a higher purpose. And, all the people you work with, from Brendan to Tony, like the same thing happens to them. And everybody's like, yeah, but they've reached that. No, they reached that because they did that. They changed that one thing first. They started giving and then they reached those levels of success. It didn't happen the other way. It can't happen the other way. The universe will never allow it to happen the other way.
We are in a value exchange economy, and it's not cost and price. It's value out, value in. And when we understand that, then our job is to give as much value in the world as possible. Mm-hmm. And then let the world take care of us.
And it will.
And it will.
And it does. And, so many people get caught up in the cost, but cost is only an issue in the absence of value. I've lived by that one thing. It was told to me when I was an advisor. They said, cost is only an issue in the absence of value. And I really thought about that. And I thought about it like money. Money is a tool. It's just like the shovel in your garage. It's nothing else. Don't make it evil. Don't make it anything. A shovel can be used to kill somebody, but you don't. A shovel can be used when you want a beautiful garden. You take the shovel off the shelf or the wall and you go dig a hole and you start creating this beautiful, beautiful garden that you envisioned, that you dreamed up. So first you had the dream, then you had the vision. And then what you did is you grabbed the tool and you started creating. You notice how all these words that I just mentioned about making a beautiful garden are all the principles that we've been talking about with wealth. Don't make money anything other than what it is. Money is just a means of exchange. If you look in the Latin word for money, it means flow. All your money must be in motion. It can't be sitting somewhere, but that's what we're taught to do. Take your money that you make, that you traded hours for dollars running on the treadmill of life, and you put them somewhere and you leave them sit in somebody else's control. First mistake. And if you follow that model, you will always stay on the financial hamster wheel or the hamster wheel of life, just running until someday your heart gives out, your bladder gives out, cancer hits you. And then you're just like, this life sucks. I'm done. I read a book by Dr. Phil. I never say this. When I was a kid, I was young, I was in my 20s. I know you're like, oh, here you go. You just ruined yourself. I was in a tough place. I was in a blame place. I was going through hard times. I found ways to blame everything. I found ways to blame everyone. This person did this, which put me in this situation. And I can't remember who said it. I think a friend of mine gave me this book and it was Dr. Phil. I'm like, I'm not reading Dr. Phil. They said, you have to read Dr. Phil. Otherwise don't ever talk to me again. And I read this book. And the only principle of this book was, I think it was called Life Strategies, was take responsibility for everything that happens in your life. If something bad happens in your life, it's not somebody else's fault. Even if it is, it's your problem. Solve your problem. And that's, I think, one thing that we've gotten into is a world where everybody blames everybody else for all the problems in their life. Oh, the government did this. Oh, the government's raising taxes. Oh, this. Oh, the pandemic. Oh, the 2008 recession. And folks, the 2008 recession was nothing compared to what's coming soon. But for people that take this knowledge and apply this knowledge, this thing that might be coming, I don't know when, I can't time the market, but when it does happen, it will be the biggest opportunity for many of your lives. But for the rest of you, you will be curled up in the corner, like you mentioned, in the fetal position, burying your head in the sand, waiting for this thing to go by, thinking, oh, I just got to wait for it to go by like a storm. No, you have to ride the storm. You have to stand up, hold the torch up high and say, follow me. I will show you through the storm. And that is called opportunity and creation. And those that do that will go on to have massive success because they solved people's problems.
Until I was prepared to take responsibility for the choices that got me in the Ponzi scheme, I was not equipped to make the choices to get me out of it. And until we're willing to accept our role, not blame, your role, your responsibility, your ability to respond, we can't do anything about it, whether it's a relationship, whether it's health, whether it's, when you finally got to that resolution, where I finally got to the resolution saying, all right, I got dealt with the cancer cards. It is what it is. How am I going to deal with it? I finally took control. And I sat with my doctor and I said, here's the deal. You are not to do health to me. You're going to do health with me. I'm getting in a ring and you're one of the people in my corner. You're about to make me as strong as possible to fight the fight of my life. And if you're up for it, then great, you're on the team. If you're not, I'll find someone else. But I think we need to be willing to accept our role in it without beating ourselves up to a point. Because then once we accept the role, we can find the lessons in it. We can change our rules. We can change our behaviors and make sure that it ain't going to happen again. But if we are spending the time trying to find blame and just point the finger, then it allows us to relinquish responsibility and say, I don't need to fix it. Someone else did this to me. And now you didn't change, you didn't grow, and you're doomed to repeat it, in my opinion.
And that's what happens. We just almost like, Groundhog Day, that people just continue to live that same day over and over and start wondering, why can't I get off of this awful thing? It just seems like when you get one thing of bad luck that happens, what do they call it? I don't know but every bad thing seems to happen. It's because you're thinking bad, because your mindset's broken, because once one bad thing happens, you get in a negative mindset and it just perpetuates. It's like cancer. It's just like, if you allow it will metastasize and just keep growing. But if you say, no, I'm going to beat this, and you fight it and you focus all your time and attention on it, I got to be careful. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical professional, but I truly believe that we have the ability to heal ourselves on so many levels that we aren't even capable of understanding. But you're a perfect example. How would people learn about this? What would be the place where they'd go to work with you? Because a lot of people, if they watch this, they're gonna be like, there's no way I could ever work with Mel. I mean, he's working with the big guys. He wouldn't work with me, but that's not the act of giving. And that's not what you're trying to do. How do people learn about this?
So it's the reason I put my show out. It's the reason I put content out. The more people that we can shine the light on, here's a core belief. Financial independence is a birthright. You just need to understand how to claim it. It's a birthright. So many walk through life not believing that they have the right to financial independence, to have, and I use the term affluence intentionally. And a lot of people say, oh, you mean opulence? So no, affluence. Affluence has 4 characteristics and only one has to do with money. Affluence, an affluent life, first, is a meaningful life. It's something that brings us joy. It's something that fills us from the inside out. It's an impactful life. It allows us to know that what we do matter, that whether it's a handshake, whether it's a smile, whether it's some big task, we left everyone better because of us.
There's that universal law.
Yeah. And then it's a fruitful life. There's where the money comes in, because we need that to perpetuate the message, the mission, the movement, the legacy, all of that. And then the last is it's a peaceful life. Because I can live at peace knowing that I'm in alignment with what I was called to do, with my values, and know that the people that I care dearly about are all taken care of. And so when we work from a place of affluence, the idea isn't just about wealth. And you mentioned this early on, is that wealth is a statistic. It's commas in a bank account. Okay. It's just a number. And there's plenty of wealthy people that have no richness in your life.
Absolutely.
And what we really need is to build richness in our life. And that is at your own design. And if it happens to be a yacht in Monaco, great. If it happens to be a tent in Montana, totally fine. And it's not based on social media. It's not based on the media. It is based on your core desires and your vision done properly. That I think allows people to find happiness. It allows people to find complete freedom. It allows people to have a deeper impact and live a richer life. It is what at the core allows you to say, I'm going to live a life that outlives me.
I love it. And if I can, I'm going to read this. Was sent over to me. After all, we are placed here to create a legacy beyond acquiring, achieving, and accomplishing, but by connecting at a meaningful level and impacting lives through our businesses, services, and ideals each and every day. That's from your bio. And that is the perfect way to sum up everything you just said. Mel, this has been just an honor, a privilege. I knew it was going to be good, but I just didn't know we were to just have so many of the same thought patterns. I really didn't. Like I said, brothers from different mothers, they came to my mind. So thank you for your time. And also everybody, make sure you check out Affluence Blueprint. And also he's got books, but Entrepreneur's Solution, The Entrepreneur's Solution is a book. It's a must read. So you guys check that out. And to all of you, have a beautiful day. Thank you all. And Mel, thank you.
Man, Chris, thank you for having me. This has been great.
If you liked this video, make sure you smash, kind of like this, the thumbs up button, and make sure you subscribe to this channel for more amazing content.